The alien science ship Harmony's Edge floated helplessly in the cold darkness of space. Its beautiful crystal walls were broken and cracked like a shattered glass window. Air was leaking out through the holes, making white clouds in the vacuum. Inside the ship, Captain Valara tried not to panic as her four thin arms shook while reaching for the emergency transmitter. She had sent out dozens of distress calls already. Each time, she hoped someone would answer. Someone who could save her crew of 30 scientists before the enemy ships caught up to them. The Veltar warships were getting closer every minute, and she could see their red weapon lights starting to glow brighter on her scanner screen. "Please," she whispered in her musical alien language, "someone help us. The Cathari were peaceful people. They spent their lives studying stars and planets, not fighting wars. Their ships had no weapons, no shields strong enough to stop military attacks. All they wanted was to learn about the universe and share knowledge with other species. Now they were going to die because they had discovered something the Veltar Empire wanted to steal far across the galaxy." On the bridge of the massive human warship Relentless, Admiral Jake Morrison was having his morning coffee when the distress signal reached Earth's territory. The message was broken and full of static, but the translation computers did their best to make sense of it. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from 20 years of space battles. He had fought pirates, rebels, and worse things in the dark corners of human space. "Admiral, we're getting an emergency broadcast," said Lieutenant Brooks from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that still showed surprise when bad things happened. "It's from outside our territory, sir. Looks like a science ship under attack." Morrison put down his coffee and walked over to study the data on the main screen. The signal was weak, but he could see enough. Civilians in trouble. Enemy ships closing in. People about to die while politicians talked about rules and boundaries. "How far away?" he asked. 18 hours at maximum jump speed, sir." Morrison nodded and turned to face his crew. The bridge was busy with 30 officers and technicians, all of them watching him and waiting for orders. These were his people, men and women who had volunteered to serve in the Terran Defense Fleet. Knowing they might have to fight and die to protect others, "Lieutenant Brooks, send a message to all ships in Task Force Hammer. Tell them to prepare for immediate departure." Brooks looked confused. "Sir, shouldn't we contact the Galactic Council first? This is outside our jurisdiction. There are protocols we're supposed to follow." ... Morrison's expression grew hard. The Galactic Council was a group of alien politicians who liked to hold meetings and write reports while real problems got worse. They would spend days arguing about who had permission to help the scientists, while those same scientists died waiting for rescue. "The Council can write their angry letters later," Morrison said. "Right now, people need help. Signal Captain Hayes on the Thunderstrike and tell her we launch in 20 minutes. Across the fleet, human warships came alive with activity. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of her heavy cruiser, reading the orders that had just arrived. She was a veteran officer who had served under Morrison for 8 years. When he said jump, she asked how high, while already reaching for her boots. "All hands battle stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. We have civilians under attack and we're going to get them out." Her crew moved fast. Engineers checked the jump drives and loaded extra ammunition. Pilots ran to their fighters and started pre-flight checks. Medical teams prepared their equipment for wounded survivors. Everyone knew the drill because they had done it before. Humans were good at rescuing people, even when those people were complete strangers from other worlds. The other species in the galaxy called humans Deathworlders because Earth was such a dangerous place to evolve. Earthquakes, hurricanes, ice, ages, asteroid impacts, and predators that could kill you in 100 different ways. Most aliens came from gentle worlds where the biggest danger was maybe running out of food for a few days. But Earth had tried to kill humans every single day. For millions of years, and humans had survived by being tough, stubborn, and willing to help each other when things got bad. When a human heard someone calling for help, they didn't stop to ask about paperwork or permissions. They just grabbed their weapons and went to work. 12 human warships formed up around the Relentless in perfect formation. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Their crews were ready for whatever they might find at the other end of their journey. Ready to fight, ready to die if necessary. Definitely ready to make any enemy regret threatening innocent people. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace in a flash of blue light, racing toward a battle that would show the galaxy exactly what humans were capable of when someone needed saving. The human fleet burst out of hyperspace like angry wasps emerging from a kicked nest. One moment there was empty space around the dying Cathari science ship, and the next moment 12 massive human warships materialized in perfect battle formation. The transition from hyperspace to normal space created brilliant flashes of light that lit up the darkness like lightning strikes. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Relentless, his experienced eyes taking in the battle scene in just a few seconds. The alien science vessel Harmony's Edge was barely holding together, its crystal hull leaking atmosphere in white streams. Around it, 6 Veltar cruisers had formed a hunting circle like sharks surrounding wounded prey. The enemy ships were sleek and dark, covered in armor plates that looked like black metal scales. "Tactical report," Morrison ordered, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. Commander Tom Baker, stocky man with 20 years of combat experience, studied his instruments. 6 Veltar cruisers, sir. They're moving into boarding positions. Looks like they want to capture the science ship intact instead of destroying it. Morrison nodded grimly. That meant the Cathari crew was still alive, but probably not for much longer. The Veltar Empire was known for being brutal to prisoners, especially when they wanted information about scientific discoveries. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," he announced over the fleet communication channel. "Weapons free. Target their engines and weapon systems first. I want some of them alive to carry a message back to their friends." Commander Baker looked surprised. In most space battles between civilized species, there were rules to follow. Ships were supposed to identify themselves, make formal challenges, and give enemies a chance to surrender before opening fire. It was considered proper military etiquette throughout the galaxy. "Sir, shouldn't we transmit a warning first?" "Protocol says we should demand they withdraw before engaging."
Oh.
Morrison's expression grew cold and hard. "Tom, those protocols are for civilized opponents who follow the same rules. The Veltar just spent the last 3 hours hunting down unarmed scientists. They'll get their warning when our first shots blow holes in their ships." The Admiral turned to his weapons officer, Lieutenant Kelly Nash, a sharp-eyed woman who could hit a target the size of a dinner plate from 1,000 miles away. "Nash, load tungsten penetrator rounds in all main batteries. Full power to the railguns." The Relentless was equipped with magnetic railguns that could fire solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The tungsten rods were each about the size of a telephone pole, but moved at 15% the speed of light when they left the gun barrels. At that velocity, they hit with the force of a nuclear bomb, but without the radiation. "Firing solution locked, sir," Nash reported. "Lead. Target acquired. Fire." The Relentless shuddered as its main weapons discharged, sending invisible death racing across space. The tungsten rods crossed the distance to their target in less than a second. The Veltar cruiser's energy shields flared bright blue as they tried to stop the incoming projectiles, but the shields were designed to deflect laser beams and plasma bursts. Not solid metal moving at relativistic speeds, the tungsten rods punched through the shields like they weren't even there. They sliced through the enemy ship's hull like a knife cutting through wet paper. The lead Veltar cruiser didn't explode dramatically like ships did in the movies, just suddenly wasn't there anymore, turned into a rapidly expanding cloud of metal fragments and frozen atmosphere. Captain Lisa Hayes watched from the bridge of the Thunderstrike as the enemy formation began to panic. "All squadrons, this is Hayes. Attack pattern, Delta. Hit them fast and hit them hard." Dozens of human fighter craft launched from the cruisers like a swarm of angry insects. Each fighter was small and fast, piloted by men and women who had trained their entire adult lives for moments like this. They dove toward the remaining Veltar ships, their weapons already charging for combat. Pilot Danny Rodriguez was flying his fighter Lucky, striking the leading wave when enemy defensive fire started, filling the space around him. Red energy beams and explosive shells turned the battlefield into a deadly light show. Rodriguez's wingman took a direct hit and disappeared in a ball of fire, but Rodriguez kept flying forward. "This is for shooting at civilians," he muttered. Lining up his target, his fighter's missiles struck a Veltar cruiser's weapon turrets, causing secondary explosions that rippled along the enemy ship's hull. But Rodriguez's fighter had taken damage too. His engines were failing, his weapons were empty, and his life support system was making alarming beeping sounds. Most pilots would have retreated at that point, looking for a safe place to eject before their fighter fell apart completely. Rodriguez saw the Veltar ship's command bridge through his cracked canopy and made a different choice. Rodriguez, to all units, he transmitted, his voice steady, despite knowing he had only seconds to live. "Tell them back on Earth that we kept our promise. We got the job done." He pushed his failing fighter into a final dive, aiming straight for the enemy bridge. The Veltar officers probably saw him coming, but there wasn't enough time for them to get out of the way. Rodriguez's fighter smashed through their command center at 300 miles per hour, taking out their bridge crew and leaving the massive warship helpless. Within 30 minutes of arriving, the human fleet had turned 4 Veltar cruisers into floating scrap metal. The 2 surviving enemy ships were already running away as fast as their engines could carry them, broadcasting panicked messages back to Veltar High Command about the crazy humans, who fought like they didn't care about dying. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace and allowed himself a small smile. The message would reach Veltar leadership within hours. They would learn that attacking innocent civilians came with a price when humans were around too. Collect it. The transport shuttle from the Relentless docked with the damaged Cathari science ship with a loud metallic clang that echoed through both vessels. The airlock hissed open, and 12 human Marines in full combat armor stepped through like walking tanks. Each suit of powered armor stood 8 feet tall and weighed half a ton, equipped with sensors, weapons, and enough protection to walk through a minefield. Sergeant Mike Torres led the rescue team through the crystal corridors of the alien ship. The Cathari had built their vessel like a work of art, with smooth curves and walls that sparkled like diamonds. But now those beautiful walls were cracked and broken. With emergency lights flashing red warnings in alien text, Torres's heavy boots left deep dents in the crystal floor with each. His armor's computer was constantly scanning for threats, painting, targeting information on his helmet display, and keeping his weapons ready to fire. The other Marines spread out behind him in a protective formation, their movements coordinated. Like a well-rehearsed dance, the Cathari survivors they encountered along the way pressed themselves against the walls in terror. These peaceful aliens had never seen anything like human soldiers before. To them, the Marines looked like mechanical monsters, all sharp angles and weapon systems. The translator programs built into the armor tried to broadcast reassuring messages in the Cathari language, but the electronic voices probably didn't sound very comforting. "Easy there, folks," Torres said gently as they passed a group of frightened scientists. "We're the good guys. We're here to get you out of this mess." The main laboratory section had taken heavy damage during the Veltar attack. Torres had to kick down a twisted bulkhead door to reach the survivors who were trapped inside. The metal screamed in protest as his armored boot tore it away from its frame like paper. Captain Valara and 15 of her crew members were huddled together in the far corner of the room, their forearms wrapped around each other for comfort. The Cathari were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Right now, those eyes were wide with fear and exhaustion. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Torres with the Terran Defense Fleet," he announced, his armors. Translator, converting his words into musical Cathari speech. "We received your distress call, and we're here to help. Are any of your people seriously injured?" Captain Valara slowly stood up, her legs shaking from stress and relief. She had been certain they were all going to die, either from the failing life support systems or from Veltar interrogators. The appearance of human rescuers was like a miracle she hadn't dared to hope for. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. We thought no one would come." While the Marine medics treated the injured Cathari, survivors Torres established a communication link with Admiral Morrison back on the Relentless. Captain Valara's story came out in broken fragments. It's transmitted through translation computers that struggled with the technical details. Her science team had been exploring dead worlds in the outer systems, looking for evidence of ancient civilizations. On a planet called Cronax Prime, they had discovered something that made their instruments go crazy. Buried deep beneath the planet's surface were the remains of a weapon system, so powerful it could destroy entire star systems. The discovery should have been reported to the Galactic Council for careful study by teams of experts. But somehow word had leaked to the Veltar Empire. The Veltar were a military dictatorship that had been expanding their territory through conquest and intimidation for decades. They wanted that ancient weapon for themselves. They attacked 3 colonies to clear a path to Cronax Prime, Valara explained, her voice breaking with emotion. Millions of innocent people, families with children, the Veltar killed them all just to secure the hyperspace routes to the dead world. Admiral Morrison listened to the translation with growing anger. His jaw muscles tensed and his hands clenched into fists as he heard about the slaughter of civilian colonies. This wasn't just about rescuing one science ship anymore. The Veltar had committed mass murder, and they were trying to get there. Hands on a weapon that could let them commit even worse atrocities. Admiral, Captain Valara continued, you must stop them. If the Veltar control that weapon, they will use it to conquer the entire galaxy. No world will be safe. Morrison turned away from the communication screen and stared out at the stars. Through the bridge windows, senior officers were watching him, waiting for orders. They all knew that attacking Cronax Prime would mean going deep into enemy territory to assault a heavily fortified position. It would be dangerous, maybe suicidal. Captain Hayes spoke up from her position at the tactical station. Sir, intelligence reports indicate the Veltar have at least 2 full battle fleets defending that system. We'd be outnumbered 10-1. Maybe we should contact Earth's command and request reinforcements. Morrison shook his head slowly. By the time reinforcements arrive, the Veltar will have that weapon operational. How long do you think it would take them to start using it on anyone who opposes them? Commander Baker checked his computer readouts. Sir, we could send a message to the Galactic Council. Let them handle this through diplomatic channels. The Council will form a committee to study the situation, Morrison replied with disgust. They'll spend months arguing about jurisdiction and proper procedures, while the Veltar turn planets into dust. No, this ends now. He turned back to face his crew, and they could see the determination burning in his eyes. Jake Morrison had been fighting bullies and tyrants his entire career, and he wasn't about to stop now just because the odds were bad. Set course for Cronax Prime, he ordered. Maximum combat speed. Signal all ships to prepare for extended operations in enemy territory. Hayes looked worried. Sir, are you sure about this? We're talking about attacking a fortified system with just 12 ships? Morrison's smile was cold and hard. Lisa the Veltar wanted this fight when they started murdering innocent civilians. They opened this door when they decided that conquest was more important than human decency. Now we're going to walk through that door and show them what happens. When Earth's children get angry, human fleet turned toward Cronax Prime and jumped into hyperspace, carrying the rescued Cathari scientists and a promise that justice was coming for the Veltar Empire. In the cold depths of space, 12 human warships raced toward a battle that would determine the fate of countless worlds. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cronax Prime system and immediately faced a sight that would have made any other military force turn around and flee. The dead planet was surrounded by a massive ring of Veltar, defensive stations, each one bristling with enough weapons to destroy a moon. Huge orbital platforms hung in space like metal cities, their surfaces covered with missile launchers and energy. Cannons that could reach across millions of miles. But what really made the situation hopeless was the Veltar battle fleet. 60 warships patrolled the system in organized formations, their hulls painted in the dark red and black colors of the Empire. These weren't just any ships either. They were first-line military vessels with experienced crews and the latest weapons. Technology. Against 12 human ships, the odds were overwhelming. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Relentless. studying the tactical display that showed enemy positions scattered across the entire star system. Any reasonable commander would have ordered an immediate retreat to gather more ships and plan a proper campaign. Morrison had other ideas. "All ships, battle stations," he announced over the fleet communication channel. "We're going in." Gah! His tactical officer, Commander Baker, looked at the sensor readings with disbelief. "Sir, there are 60 enemy ships out there, plus all those orbital defense platforms, outnumbered 5-1, just counting their fleet." Morrison nodded calmly. "Tom, those platforms and ships are protecting something on the surface. Where we need to go? We're not here to fight a space battle. We're here to destroy that weapon before they can use it." He turned to address his weapons officer. "Lieutenant Nash, I want full bombardment of the archaeological site the moment we're in range. Use the tungsten penetrators and target anything that looks like it might be important." Captain Hayes's voice crackled over the radio from the Thunderstrike. "Admiral, all squadrons are armed and ready." "Where do you want us to hit first?" "Forget about their battle fleet, Lisa," Morrison replied. "They'll come after us anyway once we start shooting. All fighters are to focus on ground targets. Knock out their command centers, power generators, and anything else that might control that ancient weapon." The human attack began with shocking suddenness. Instead of engaging the Veltar fleet in honorable ship-to-ship combat, the humans ignored them completely and drove straight toward the planet. Fighter squadrons launched from the cruisers and formed up in tight attack formations. Their pilots already plotting courses through the defensive grid, Captain Amy Chen led the first wave, in her fighter storm dancer, diving toward the planet's surface at maximum speed. Her squadron of 20 fighters followed behind her, weaving between the orbital platforms that were trying to track them with massive cannon turrets. The Veltar defenders had expected a traditional space battle where the two fleets would face each other and exchange long-range fire until one side surrendered. They weren't prepared for enemies who ignored proper military doctrine and headed straight for their most protected installations. "This is Chen to all fighters," she transmitted, as enemy fire began filling the space around them. "Remember, we're not trying to win a dogfight. Get your bombs on target and get out. The ground troops are counting on us to clear the way." Red energy beams and explosive missiles turned the approach to Kronax Prime into a deadly obstacle course. 3 fighters from Chen's squadron were hit in the first 30 seconds, their pilots having just enough time to eject before their craft exploded. But the surviving fighters kept pressing forward, using their superior speed and maneuverability to weave between the defensive fire. Chen's own fighter took a glancing hit that sent sparks flying across her control panel and filled the cockpit with smoke. Warning lights flashed red as her engines began losing power, but she could see her target ahead, a massive command bunker built into the side of a mountain. "Target acquired," she announced, fighting to keep her damaged fighter steady. Beginning attack run. The bunker's defensive guns swiveled toward her, tracking her approach with deadly precision. Chen knew she was flying into almost certain death, but she also knew that destroying that command center might save thousands of lives on other worlds. Her fighter shuddered under enemy fire as pieces of hull plating were torn away, but she held her course at the last possible second. Chen released her payload of armor-piercing bombs directly into the bunker's main entrance. Explosives punched through layers of reinforced concrete and detonated deep inside the facility. Secondary explosions rippled through the mountain as ammunition stores and fuel tanks caught fire. Chen's fighter finally succumbed to the damage it had taken, breaking apart in midair. Her final transmission was calm and professional. "Target destroyed. Good hunting, everybody." While the fighters carved a path through the orbital defenses, the Relentless moved into bombardment position and began using its massive railguns to crack open surface installations like a hammer smashing eggs. Each tungsten projectile hit with the force of a meteor impact, sending shock waves through the planet's crust and leaving craters the size of football stadiums. But the real battle was just beginning. Hundreds of marine assault pods launched from the human ships, streaking toward the planet's surface like falling stars. Each pod contained 20 fully armed Marines in powered armor, ready to fight their way through whatever defenses they encountered on the ground. Colonel Steve Martinez rode in the lead pod, watching through his helmet display as the surface of Kronax Prime rushed up to meet them. The archaeological site was a sprawling complex of excavated ruins and modern Veltar installations, all connected by underground tunnels and protected by energy barriers. "Listen up, Marines," Martinez announced over the radio. "The Veltar have been digging here for months, and they've got the place locked down tight. But we've got two things they don't have: better equipment and the will to use it. We're going in hard and fast, and we're not stopping until that weapon is destroyed." The assault pods slammed into the planet's surface at incredible speed, their armored shells protecting the Marines inside from impacts that would have killed unprotected humans. As soon as the pods cracked open, the Marines poured out with weapons, ready. Immediately engaging Veltar troops who were still trying to figure out what was happening, the Veltar soldiers were trained in conventional warfare with organized battle lines and careful tactical movements. They weren't prepared for human Marines who advanced through enemy fire like it was a light rain, using their powered armor and superior weapons to smash through defensive positions that should have been impregnable. Martinez led his troops through the outer perimeter in less than an hour, leaving behind a trail of destroyed bunkers and demoralized enemy soldiers. The Veltar commanders kept sending reinforcements, expecting the human attack to slow down or stop when it encountered serious resistance. Instead, the Marines just fought harder, as if taking casualties only made them more determined to complete their mission. The battle for the archaeological site raged for 18 straight hours, with human forces advancing steadily deeper into the complex, despite fierce resistance. Every time the Veltar tried to establish a new defensive line, the Marines would punch through it with the relentless persistence of a natural disaster. They fought like soldiers who knew that failure meant the deaths of innocent people on it. 1,000 different worlds. When the ancient weapon facility finally fell, Colonel Martinez stood in the ruins of the control room, surrounded by shattered alien technology and the bodies of Veltar defenders who had fought to the end. His armor was scorched and dented from the long battle. But he was alive, and more importantly, the weapon that could have destroyed star systems was now nothing but twisted metal and broken dreams. The smoke was still rising from the destroyed Veltar installations when the human engineering teams arrived at the archaeological site. Admiral Morrison walked through the rubble-strewn corridors, his boots crunching on broken glass and twisted metal. The ancient facility that the Veltar had spent months excavating was now a maze of collapsed tunnels and shattered alien technology deep beneath the surface. In a chamber carved from solid rock millions of years ago, the human engineers found what everyone had been fighting over. The ancient weapon sat in the center of the room like a sleeping giant, a crystalline structure the size of a building that hummed with barely contained energy. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with an eerie light that seemed to bend space around it. Chief Engineer Robert Hayes, Captain Hayes' younger brother, ran his scanning equipment over the device, while his team set up protective barriers around the work area. The readings on his instruments made no sense at all. The weapon seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, reaching into layers of reality that human science barely understood. "Admiral," he reported over his radio, his voice filled with awe and fear, "this thing is beyond anything we've ever seen. According to my scans, it's not just a weapon, it's some kind of reality manipulation device. It could literally unmake entire star systems by changing the fundamental laws of physics in a local area." Morrison stood at the entrance to the chamber, watching his people work. Around him, Colonel Martinez's Marines maintained a defensive perimeter while medics treated the wounded and engineers documented everything they found. The cost of taking this place had been high. They had lost 43 good people in the assault, including Captain Chen and dozens of other brave souls, who had given their lives to prevent this weapon from falling into the wrong hands. Messages were flooding in from across the galaxy, transmitted through hyperspace communication networks and received by the fleet's communication officers. The first angry transmission came from Veltar High Command, delivered by a general whose face was purple with rage on the viewscreen. "Human barbarians." The Veltar commander snarled in his translated speech. "You have violated our sovereign territory and destroyed valuable archaeological sites. The Veltar Empire declares total war against your pathetic species. We will crush your homeworld and enslave your survivors. Morrison listened to the threat with the same expression he might use while watching paint dry. The Veltar had just watched 12 human ships destroy their most heavily defended installation in less than a day. If they wanted to continue this fight, they were welcome to try. The second set of messages came from the Galactic Council, and these were even more predictable. A parade of alien politicians appeared on screen, each one demanding explanations and formal apologies for various violations of galactic law. The Alteran ambassador was particularly upset about humans engaging in military action without proper authorization forms. The Terran Defense Fleet has violated 17 different interspecies treaties. The ambassador proclaimed, reading from a long list on his tablet computer. Military action in neutral space, failure to seek diplomatic solutions, destruction of archaeological sites of historical importance, and excessive use of kinetic weapons in a populated star system. Other species throughout the galaxy watched the situation with growing nervousness. The humans had just demonstrated a level of military effectiveness that nobody had expected from the primitive Deathworlders from the edge of civilized space. 12 ships had defeated a full Veltar battle group and captured their most important strategic objective. What could the humans accomplish if they really decided to go to war? In the depths of the ancient chamber, Lieutenant Colonel Beth Anderson studied the weapon with the hungry eyes of a military intelligence officer. She was Morrison's senior intelligence advisor, a brilliant woman who had spent her career analyzing alien technologies and finding ways to adapt them for human use. "Admiral," she said, approaching Morrison with a tablet full of preliminary data.
Ow!
"We need to consider the strategic implications of this device. If we could understand how it works, even partially, it would give Earth a decisive advantage in any future conflicts. We could defend our colonies against any threat, no matter how large." Anderson gestured toward the glowing crystal structure.
Think about it, sir.
"No more worrying about invasion fleets or alien empires trying to conquer human space. This weapon could guarantee our species' survival for the next 1,000 years." Morrison looked at the ancient device, then at his intelligence officer, then at the Marines who were still pulling bodies out of the rubble. Some of those bodies were human soldiers who had died to prevent this weapon from being used. Others were Veltar troops who had died trying to claim it for their empire. All of them were dead because someone thought this kind of power was worth having. Beth Morrison said quietly, "How many people died today because the Veltar wanted this weapon?" "Thousands, sir. But if we study it carefully, we could prevent future deaths by no." Morrison's voice was firm and final. "Some power is too dangerous for anyone to have. Not the Veltar, not us, not anybody. Destroy it." Anderson looked shocked. "Sir, you can't be serious. It's the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history. Can't just blow it up because we're afraid of what it might do." Morrison turned away from the weapon and faced his intelligence officer. "Beth, I've been fighting wars for 20 years, and I've learned something important. Every time someone creates a new weapon, they tell themselves they're only going to use it defensively. They're only going to use it against the bad guys. But sooner or later, the definition of bad guy starts to expand." He gestured toward the crystal structure. "Today it would be the Veltar. Tomorrow, it might be some other empire that threatens our colonies. Next year, it could be any species that doesn't agree with human policies. And eventually, some human leader would decide to use it against other humans who don't follow orders." Anderson tried to argue, but Morrison had already made his decision. "Chief Hayes, set demolition charges around that thing. I want it reduced to atoms in 30 minutes. As the human engineers prepared to destroy the ancient weapon, Morrison walked back to the surface of Kronax. Priman activated the fleet's long-range communication system. His message would reach every major world in the galaxy, transmitted on frequencies that everyone from the Galactic Council to the smallest colony outposts would receive. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet," he began, his voice calm and steady. "For those of you who don't know much about humans, let me explain something about our species." He paused, looking up at the alien stars visible through Kronax Prime's thin atmosphere. "Earth is what you call a death world. For 4 billion years, our planet tried to kill everything living on it. ice ages that lasted millions of years, asteroid impacts that blocked out the sun, volcanic eruptions that poisoned the atmosphere, and predators that could hunt us in the dark. Morrison's voice grew stronger as he continued. Most species evolved on gentle worlds where the biggest danger was maybe a food shortage or a thunderstorm. You developed advanced civilizations because your planets gave you time to think and build and create art. We developed advanced civilizations because we had to, or we would have gone extinct. The demolition charges detonated in the depths of the ancient facility, sending vibrations through the planet's crust. The reality-warping weapon that had existed for millions of years disappeared in a brilliant flash of light, taking with it the power to unmake star systems and reshape the fundamental laws of physics. We don't fight to conquer territory or enslave other species, Morrison broadcast to the galaxy. We fight to protect people who can't protect themselves. When someone calls for help, we answer because we remember what it was like to be helpless and afraid. The Veltar Empire. After receiving reports of their defeat and watching the humans casually destroy a weapon that could have made them rulers of the galaxy, quietly withdrew their declaration of war. The Galactic Council, faced with the species that would rather destroy ultimate power than risk misusing it, stopped demanding explanations and started asking questions about defensive alliances. And throughout the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, people slept a little easier knowing that somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the humans were watching and waiting, ready to answer the next distress call with 12 ships and the absolute certainty that some things were worth fighting for, no matter what the cost. The rescue of one small science vessel had become something much larger. A declaration that justice still existed in the universe, and that those who would prey on the innocent would always have to answer to the children of Earth.